Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. So hopefully you're all keeping safe at the moment. So one of the companies I have a deep connection with is Orranje Performance. So what I wanted to try and do today was actually give you an overview and go back into the history of where the company came from and where it is today. So I'm going to jump on the road now and head over to where it all began over in Dickens Heath. So let's get on the road, and while we're on the way I'll talk you through where the name of Orranje came from. Okay, so let's start with the basics. So the name Orranje Performance, so I've heard many a different pronunciation of it, so let's get straight to it. It's Orranje Performance as in the colour, so I've heard people call it Orranje, Orranje. It's definitely Orranje Performance. So if you've been in and around the new Mini community for a while now, surely you're going to have heard of them. But if you haven't, then what do they do? So Orranje Performance manufacture and supply aftermarket performance parts, as well as styling parts for your new Mini. So that's from the R53 generation all the way through to the F56. And I'm sure if you ask them about any other performance parts for other cars, if they have that supplier on board, I'm sure they can look those parts up and actually get them to you as well, even if they're not listed on their website. So they're based in the UK and they sell plenty of other aftermarket performance parts from different manufacturers, but the thing they really pride themselves on is they actually have their own range of products that are all made in the UK. So Orranje have a really strong ethos that's been there from day one, which is if it's not good enough for their car, it's not good enough for yours. So in other words, if they have any concerns around the quality of their own product or that of one they supply from another manufacturer, they just won't sell it. Okay, so what's my link to Orranje? So current day situation, nothing whatsoever. So the parts that I have on my car, I purchase all myself. I may have helped Orranje test them in the past, and my historic connection with Orranje will come apparent in the video. But current day, no connection whatsoever, other than the fact Ollie does great prices on parts. So whenever I'm in the market for an aftermarket part, I tend to go to Ollie for them, just because he does the best prices. It's as simple as that. Okay, so where does the name come from, Orranje? It's obviously quite unique. And especially the spelling, Orranje, so performance. So where does it come from? So originally the company was set up with 4 people. So there was Nigel Brown, Richard Everett, Richard Phillips and myself, James Baker. So we were scratching our heads for a long time trying to name the company when we were pulling it together, and we just couldn't come up with anything rolled off the tongue. We looked at our initials, which was RRNJ, that just didn't flow off the tongue and wasn't a great choice. And then Richard Phillips, God bless him, struck gold. So he was looking at those initials and somehow he managed to twig in his head that he could spell the word orange, which is obviously where the name comes from. It has all of our initials in it, muddled about with those, and that's where we came to the name Orranje. And I think it was a masterstroke from Rich. It's something unique. So Orranje has gone from strength to strength in the last 10 years. So it started with one product and that was it. Now Ollie's listing over 2,000 products on their website, which is just amazing. But it wasn't always that way. So we're heading over to where Orranje was first born, the first unit that we had, Orranje HQ version 1. So it's a tiny little unit in Dickens Heath, and it actually existed way before Orranje. And we were actually renting it, and I'll talk through the story as well in terms of why we were in that unit and how we come up with Orranje. Okay, so we're just in Dickens Heath now, just outside of Dickens Heath. So what I'm going to do is give you a tour of the unit, location, talk about some of the challenges of getting there and back, and then we'll come back in the car and we'll talk about where the history of Orranje and where it came from. Okay, so you join me at Orranje HQ version 1. So this was the very first place that Rich Phillips, Rich Everett and I actually used. My first memories of actually meeting Ollie were also at this first original unit, and this is where Orranje was literally set up and ran for the first couple of years, so back in 2008. So it's freezing cold today, so it's -1. So I'm out and about on my bike, so I thought I'd do a little bit of filming, and then what we'll do is we'll jump back in the car and tell you a bit more about the story where it's a little bit warmer. But let's just give you a bit of a tour of the location, just to show actually how remote it was, and how tiny Orranje actually started. So I'm surprised when we walked down this driveway that we could even get our cars up and down it. It's literally potholed, and it hasn't changed since we rented the unit all those years ago. So you can see, so just outside of Dickens Heath we are at the moment. There's this tiny little side road which is the driveway to the original unit that we set Orranje up in. So you can see here, this is just the start of it in terms of the state of the driveway. And at the time, me, Rich Phillips and Rich Everett had some low cars, so we all had our 53s at the time from memory, and it was a nightmare, even on springs before we got coilovers. It was a crazy time trying to get down here. I remember coming down with Rich Phillips, I think he's an original GP, and just trying to negotiate some of these potholes and lumps and bumps. And it's probably really tricky to capture on camera just how bad it is, but I mean, if you try and take a look at that, trying to get a car over now, I mean, just walking down it, and I'm here with my bike at the moment, and actually even just pushing this down, it's a bit of a nightmare. So this is where I actually first met the two Riches and Olu, and I'll talk you through that story when I'm in the warm. But you can see here, this is coming up to the opening of the unit we used to hire. And look, funny enough, there is actually a Mini here. That's nothing to do with us, but that's quite amusing to see that there. So that was the unit opposite that was rented out. And then here's the unit, the original one. So this one on the right that you can actually see is Rich Everett's original unit. So I'll talk you through a bit more of the story of that. Just back there, under that tarpaulin and tyres, just at the back, is the original unit that Orranje was set up in. So this bit at the front now, this box wasn't there originally. We actually used to drive in and go through to the unit that way. I mean, it's definitely weird being back here. The last time I was here was with Rich Phillips, Ollie and Rich Everett, emptying out the units for the very last time. And there's a lot of happy memories. I'll talk to you about in terms of Saturday Club was all here. You'll see, I'll throw some pictures on the screen, all the original photos of the G-Wing and all the original Orranje products were pretty much all taken out on this bit of concrete here. And in front of the unit there, we did many installations, many original customer collections of G-Wings were actually to this unit, and fair play to the likes of Andy Mullen and people like that actually made it down this driveway to collect their original G-Wings before they were even called G-Wings. So it was the GP Star Wing, it was called at that point. There's plenty of happy memories. In terms of Saturday Club, it's where we used to meet up before we set up Orranje, and we used to, well, many an hour away, just talking and chatting. We'd have plenty of plans to work on the cars, but that never always happened. But it didn't matter. We were enjoying ourselves and having a great time and a laugh doing it. So I'm just taking to the top of the driveway now, because our local haunt was the Miller and Carter, which is just in the background over there. So if it was a cold day like today, we'd bring the cars up, park them up, plan to do something, and then before you know it, we're heading to Miller and Carter to go and sit in the warm. Because as you can see from that unit, it was very basic. It had electric and lights, but no source of heating, so it was absolutely freezing on days like this. So we'd end up coming here, parking the cars up, doing whatever bits we needed to do, then heading straight to Miller and Carter for some nice lunch. I think we made some great memories back at the Miller and Carter here in Dickens Heath. So a lot of the decisions and discussions around setting up Orranje originally all happened in here, because it was a lot more comfortable and warmer than the unit that we were just at. So, I mean, there's fond memories coming here, absolutely filthy, forgetting to bring change of clothes sometimes when we've been working on the cars, so having to come up to the Miller and Carter. It's not the poshest of places, but certainly when you're walking in and people are on their a Saturday afternoon drink or a Sunday lunch, we suddenly turn up in greasy overalls. But the staff welcomed us. We got to know a lot of the staff really well, recognised our faces. It was actually a nice place to come as we were working on the cars, so no, some fond memories here. So let's head back to the wall now, and I'll talk you through the next steps of the Orranje story. Okay, so in September 2008, way before anyone had an idea of Orranje and what it would become, two friends, Rich Phillip and Rich Everett, would meet on weekends to work on each other's R53s. So I think at the time, Rich had a GP and Richard Everett had a JCW R53. And it wasn't long before they decided that they wanted to have a go at developing some parts for the Mini community. I think at the time, they'd sold some gaiters, so they'd done sort of a bit of trimming. I know Rich Everett was into flocking, so that's where you have in the rally cars, the fluffy dashboards, etc. So he was offering that service, again, not under the banner of Orranje, but just something the two of them were doing to earn some money on the side. So in February 2010, they came up with their first product. So in the back of a Mini GP, you have obviously the shopping bar and the two red panels either side. So you have the seat delete kit and then these two red finishing panels either side of the car. So they decided they were going to use the panels out of Rich's car to actually replicate those and sell them, because it was becoming popular at that time to have a track R53. So a lot of people were deleting the seats and wanted some sort of nice finishing panel for the back of the car. So the guys actually took a mould of that, and that was the first ever product, still not under the Orranje banner, but the first product they'd came up with outside of the trimming and flocking. And while they were doing that, it was about the same time that I actually met the guys. So at the time I had my silver R53 and I was looking to upgrade the performance. So Rich Phillips had a Newman cam and some injectors for sale. I nipped over to their unit in Dickens Heath, which is the same one that I've just shown on the video. And that's where I met them. We got on like a house on fire. I mean, I can't tell you the actual joke that Rich Phillip used at the time because there's a lot of profanity in it. However, for anyone that met Rich, you can imagine some of the colourful jokes or the straight speaking way he'd come to. It was hilarious at the time. We got on like a house on fire, the three of us. I started going up there more and more and spending more and more time with them on weekends. And on a weekly basis that would happen, and it turned into what we refer to as the Saturday Club. So it'd be me and the two Richies. We'd go up to the unit, work on our cars. We'd have a George Foreman grill in one of the units, where we'd cook up some lunch, or we'd go out and get some sort of takeaway while we're working on the cars. And that's what we used to do every Saturday, especially over the summer. It was actually quite nice out there at the unit. So during those conversations over at the Miller and Carter, we'd come up with lots of ideas, things that we wanted. Obviously, the two Richies had learnt from their making those GP replica panels in terms of GRP. And that's where it all came across us, that actually we wanted a different wing to the back of the car. There just wasn't many offerings apart from the Challenge wings at the time. And the Mini GP1 spoiler cost sort of, it was about £1,500, £2,000, something like that, to buy from Mini. If they'd sell you, you'd have to have a chassis number and everything. So all of us decided we wanted one. So we took advantage of Richard Everett's design skills. He actually drew up the CAD designs. I think he used some 3D scannings to actually create the first ever mould for what is now known the G-Wing. Back then it was the GP style wing. The reason we wanted to go down that route was the fact we wanted a wing that we didn't have to have the cutouts on the glass, because on the GP it actually has little cutouts for the wings. So part of Rich Everett's design was actually to eradicate that by adding some extra little extending parts, so it actually wrapped around the glass rather than having to have the cutout. So we actually had the moulds made, created our first wing, and the photos you see on the R53 of mine was actually the first ever GP style wing that was produced, painted and fitted to a car. And I'm really proud to have been a part of the creation of that product. That product now is still for sale. It's been through many iterations, as I'm going to talk through now, but just proud to know that I was there from day one with that product. Okay, around that time, Nigel Brown contacted Richard Everett because he needed some lightweight body panels for his track car. So I put a photo of it now. It's an epic machine. If you ever get a chance to see it, go and take a look. They're amazing. He had some contacts in terms of local GRP companies close to him. So did Rich, obviously, with the work they'd done and everything they'd learned with the Orranje rear panels. Again, Orranje wasn't a company at this point still. So they set about moulding the doors, the boots, the bonnets in GRP. And that led to the discussions between the four of us, so the two Riches, me and Nigel, in terms of whether there was a viable business there where we could make and sell the GP style wings as well as the lightweight panels. And that's where Orranje came from. The four of us got together and decided to set up the company that we now know as Orranje. And that's where we talked through. We came up with the name. So in August 2010, the GP style wing was ready for testing. But unfortunately the spoiler failed, so there were some issues with the brittle GRP sides cracking from the flex during normal road use. But as we talked about Orrange's ethos, if it's not good enough, it's not going on the car. So Rich Everett set about a new process for actually producing the sides. So in December 2010, a plastic prototype was ready to be tested to destruction. The model was put through its paces and proven to withstand hot and cold temperatures. It was on the back of track cars, it went on a road car and did thousands and thousands of miles of testing before it was released to the public. So the biggest difference with this new product and the fact it was injected moulded plastic instead of the GRP was the fact it didn't crack during flexing, and we've seen many examples after that have tried to copy what Orranje did. However, they use GRP and there's issues of cracking and things like that you just don't see with the Orranje G-Wing. So one thing we learned as well was the fact that the G-Wing sides were coming out the moulds and they weren't perfect. They needed some sanding and work from a body shop to get them perfect before you could put them on the car. And back to that philosophy, it just wasn't good enough. So Rich went back and had a CNC machined solid aluminium tool created so that the sides would come out perfect every time. Now there was a lot of investment there, but it was worth it to get that final product. Further down the line, Nige decided he wanted to focus purely on his race parts. So he parted ways with the company and the three of us continued on with Orranje. Again, all in this tiny little unit. Okay, it was around that time that Ollie actually joined the ranks. So he wasn't formally part of Orranje, however he helped us with a lot of the testing of the products and just there for the banter. So Ollie joined Saturday Club and we've been great friends ever since. So during 2011 and 2012 we continued to make and ship items out of that old unit and that kept us busy many Saturdays, and I think it became obvious that the balance of life was challenging with Orranje. So at the time I had my first daughter was born, so Sky, and I just couldn't commit enough time to Orranje, and I was absolutely gutted because it was something I was enjoying, but I just couldn't commit to it and it wasn't fair on the other two. So I decided to part ways and sell my shares back to the guys so that they could focus their time and effort on growing Orranje. At that point, Richard Everett was still doing his product development role as a full-time job outside of Orranje, and Richard Phillips was a kitchen fitter. Okay, so by 2013, Orranje had moved to its second HQ, which was Rich Phillips' single garage at his home. So we'll head over there now, and I'll talk you through that history at that point. So you join me in the next part of Orrange's journey. So we're at Lapwing Drive. I'm not going to take you to the actual house, just out of the respect for Rich Phillips' family, because they still live on the drive. But this is where Orranje was taken next. So after that unit, it actually all moved into Rich's garage. It was an important time in Orranje. It was a time that was needed. It was when pretty much Rich Phillips ran the show. Obviously, as I talked about, I'd stepped away from the company, as had Nige at this point. Ollie wasn't involved, and Rich Everett had limited involvement because of his work. So yeah, what I'll do, let's head back into the warm, and I'll sort you through the next stages of Orrange's growth. So as I mentioned, I'd actually stepped away from the company. Now Rich Everett was at the point that he had little input, because again, work commitments just meant he couldn't spend the time on Orranje. Whereas Rich Phillips, because he was a kitchen fitter, work was up and down, so he had that ability to spend more time. Plus it was in his garage, so it was closer for him to get to and pack the parts, etc. Rich Phillips wanted to take Orranje full-time, leaving his kitchen fitting business behind. However, this would only be possible if he had all the funds available for him to be able to do that, and 100% shareholding would allow him to do that. So Rich Everett kindly handed his shares of Orranje back to Rich Phillips, which would allow him to grow the company and take on those additional funds to progress it to where it needed to be. And I mean, this was perfect timing for Rich, because he just wasn't happy being a kitchen fitter at the time. And Orranje needed to take that next step and have someone actually commit full time to it. And I'll tell you what, that's exactly what Rich Phillips did. So he quit his kitchen fitting job and ploughed every minute of every day into Orranje performance. I think one thing that really benefited Rich when he was growing Orranje by himself was the fact he was already part of the mini community. He was at all the shows, on the forums, social media, etc. So he actually understood the people he was offering products to, and that really helps with the business. So back in the day, the Midlands breakfast meets used to be a really big event. So there used to be one on a monthly basis, whether it was mini talk, mini foo, etc. And we always made sure, as representatives of Orranje, that we would always make sure if there's anything going on in the Midlands, we'd try and be there. So one of the stories I've got to share is in terms of one that actually Rich Phillips arranged. So at the Toby Carvery at Stonebridge Island in the Midlands. So we'd go, turn up, check out all the cars in the car park, and there was a big group of us. We'd go in, have a buffet breakfast, and just chat and spend hours just talking about minis and life and everything else, and having a really good catch up and a chin wag. And that's always great, but what we tend to do is try and go for a drive after, or get some photos of the car. Now Rich Phillips had this brainwave to go and drive somewhere locally, and we ended up at Hampton Manor, which is only 5 minutes away from Stonebridge, and it's actually where I got married. So for those that don't know Hampton Manor, it's actually a big manor house in the countryside. It's a great great venue for weddings, and it actually has a Michelin star restaurant on site as well. So you can imagine the reaction we got when there were sort of 20 odd minis, modified minis, turn up. To be fair to the staff, they welcomed us in, let us use the bar. Obviously, thinking about it, it was early morning, so there certainly was no alcohol involved. So everyone ordered teas and coffees round. And we had a good old chat again and a good old catch up in there. Now the funny thing for me is Rich Phillips, being the kind-hearted soul he was, actually offered to pay for everyone's tea and coffee and foot the bill. So as we were all leaving, Rich got the bill, and I've never seen such a shocked face on Rich. So I think that was the most expensive tea and coffee round Rich has ever brought, but God bless him, he paid it, sucked it up, and off we went to take more pictures of the car in the grounds. So another story I wanted to tell you in terms of Orranje just going that extra mile. So back in the early days, when there were very few products in the Orranje range, there was actually a big order coming from the Dutch forums. So Davy Copen over in Holland had actually arranged a group buy of a number of different products with these G-wings, I think GP inserts and a few other bits. However, the shipping to get that over there would have cost a ridiculous amount. It was that big an order. So what did Orranje do? So Rich Everett and myself actually loaded up Rich's Rover 75 estate at the time, booked some tickets, booked a hotel, and actually drove all the way over to Holland, through France, Belgium, all the way up to Vert, to drop off and hand deliver all of those Orranje products to the guys on the Dutch forums. And that's just showing that extra step Orranje always takes to make sure the customer's happy. So Davy Copen was a great host. He showed us the site, even invited us into his family home for lunch. We had an evening out, went for a few beers and things like that. So it was a great trip over there. It was the first and only trip I've made to Holland, and I definitely want to go back at some point because it was a beautiful country. And there's lots of little stories like this. I could fill the video with lots of great stories on all the different meets, the shows that we all went to as Orranje, whether it was Mini in the Park, the big Mini show, and all the other shows that Orranje have attended. Rich Everett continue to support Orranje in a capacity in terms of helping with design work, such as the adjustable G-wing, so the brackets that allow you to tilt the wing on the G-wing. Orranje did them first. I'm seeing plenty of replicas of them now, but Orranje were the first company to do it and offer it, and it was Rich Everett's own design. So that wasn't even something that was offered on the Mini GP from Mini. That was a brand new design from Rich Everett. Ollie helped out creating Orrange's first website, which is actually funny, is actually still the store that Orranje is using today. Now I know Ollie's got plenty of plans to upgrade that in the future, and that's coming soon, so keep an eye out for their new website. So the next phase of Orranje is the sad part for me. So during 2014, it was still based out of Rich's garage, and Orranje was on track for its best ever year in terms of profit and turnover. Sales were flowing through, and it was great times for the business. And it was at that point Rich Phillips was actually diagnosed with cancer. Rich, being a great person that he was, continued to run Orranje as he was going through all his diagnosis and treatment. Did an amazing job and didn't let it affect any of his sales at the time. And he soldiered on. Absolute legend. However, Rich's cancer wasn't getting any better. He was going through a lot of awful treatment at the time. It was really sad to see him, and being so close to him and the four of us. It was just an awful time to see a friend go through such awful times, and he was suffering quite a bit to the point that Rich Everett and Ollie had to step in and put Orranje on a hiatus and just pause the sales, and allow Rich just to concentrate on trying to get himself better. So unfortunately, his cancer diagnosis just wasn't getting any better, to the point that it became terminal, which was an awful time. I remember receiving the phone call now, and I'm holding back the tears now just talking about it. It's awful. But in August 2015, following the short battle, Rich actually passed away from cancer, and that was devastating news for everyone that knew him or heard about him. Not only did it impact his friends and family, but the Mini community itself were just as gutted. And I think that shines so much when you see his funeral. And I'll put a picture up on the screen. The amount of Minis that turned up, the community turned up in the masses for his funeral, and there was a big procession from his house over to the cemetery where it was held. Amazing to see, but again, you just don't take it in at the time because you were just so distraught. And we all really suffered when we lost Rich. Rest in peace, Rich. I have much love for Rich Phillips and to Rich Everett and Ollie, and I'm absolutely gutted. Miss him every day. And this brings us on to our next step in the Orranje journey. So what happened after that? Okay, so we move over to the next stage of the journey. So before Rich passed away, he actually asked Ollie to take over Orranje Performance. So Ollie was a web designer at the time, but did have some flexibility in terms of being able to actually take on the Orranje brand and push it onto its next stage. So it wasn't starting from a blank slate as such, because he had the Orranje name and the legacy that Rich Phillips had created. So Ollie moved into his own garage at his house and rebuilt the company alongside working on his full-time job as a web designer. So Ollie put loads of hard work into it, and we all helped him out where we could, and he quickly outgrew his own garage, and Orranje went through a number of temporary spaces. So he used his own garage. He then had to take on a single sort of self-storage unit. So then he had to take a second self-storage unit, and the business kept growing and growing out of this garage and self-storage units. He did a great job while actually working on it part-time. That's when he took that massive leap to actually go and get a new unit, because Orranje had just outgrown all of that. So he actually moved into a 550 square foot unit right next door to where he was working as a web designer at the time. So by May 2017, Orranje had become more than just a part-time job for Ollie. He was able to actually quit his job as a web designer and focus purely on Orranje, just like Rich Phillips had done. And it was amazing to see. I was so proud of Ollie at the time when he did it. And even better than that, Orranje was getting the recognition it deserves. So Orranje not only offered amazing products, but they also gave back to the community, and I think that showed So the Mini magazine, so Performance Mini now, used to be Modern Mini, actually awarded them the best independent tuner and specialist, and that was voted by the public as well, so that means even more for the fact of what Rich had done before he passed away, and what Ollie had done to grow the business since. So proud of them for that. And it continues to grow strength and strength, building on that ethos we talked about being friendly and approachable company that are dedicated to supplying quality products and not just trying to sell you anything. So you join me outside Orrange's next headquarters, which is just outside of Lichfield on an industrial estate. So it was where Ollie actually moved into a unit right next door to where he was working, and it's actually the same building, same entrance when he was a web designer. So he basically subletted part of that unit that they weren't using, and it was able to give him a space away from home, larger than his garage and his self-storage units, and a much better base for Orranje. So it's really exciting times, because it was the first official sort of unit that Orranje had ever sort of rented. So great news. So Orranje went from strength to strength. Not only did they have an expansive range of different manufacturers' aftermarket products for the Mini, but they had products like the Gwing, the R56 bumper conversion for the R53, and there were so many parts that Orranje could supply. They had to have somewhere larger like this, so Ollie could actually hold stock rather than having to order everything in as he sold it. So by May 2017, Orranje had become more than just a part-time job for Ollie. So Ollie actually, so proud of him, quit his job as a web designer and took Orranje on full-time, mirroring just what Rich Phillips had done when he was building the business as well. So by 2019, Orranje had completely outgrown this site behind us in Lichfield, and Ollie was on the hunt for the right unit to grow Orranje to the next step again, and he finally found his perfect unit not too far away, actually, in Rugeley. Now that's where he's currently based, and he had to do a bit of a temporary storage because he had to get out of this unit and the new unit wasn't ready. So he temporarily based himself in a garage and some storage units and things like that, just on a very temporary basis. Again, him and Kate did a great job of keep Orranje going while they were switching units. And what we'll do now is actually head over to the new unit just locally in Rugeley. So you find me at my final destination, which is Orrange's latest headquarters. It's an amazing difference to see. Really proud of Ollie. So gone all the way from that little unit down in Dickens Heath through a number of garages, self-storage units, the smaller unit, to this one now. What an amazing difference. You can see it's just this one over here next to my R53. It's a hell of a lot bigger than anything he's had before. So it's way over 2,000 square feet of storage unit space, so you can imagine the amount of products that it can get in there now. So just to put that into perspective, there's over 2,000 products they offer now, 27,000 pieces of stock in stock at any one time. That's an amazing difference to those early days where we may have had one or two G-Wings on the shelf. So really proud of Ollie. Another fantastic development that you may have seen on social media from Orranje, some of you may not have, is that they're no longer using external companies to produce the core Orranje products. So the likes of the G-Wing, GP inserts, etc. are now all made in-house in a sister company that's been created. So I'm really proud of the guys. So Rich Everett and Ollie have been able to join forces, so it's really good that a founding member is actually now back involved in Orranje, and they can produce and manufacture items for Orranje, incorporating the moulding, fabrication, the painting of the sides and things like that, and the composites. The guys already had the moulds for the products, they had the know-how, so all they needed to do was purchase the equipment and train up the staff. So they've now got a couple of members working in this sister company, and we'll cover more on that in a future video when we do a tour of Orranje HQ as well. So that brings us to the end of today's video. I just wanted to mention actually that once all this is over and done with lockdowns, etc., we have 2 more videos coming up linked to Orranje. So the first is Ollie's invited us along, once it's safe to do so, to do a tour of headquarters, take a look and see what the life and day of Orranje is like for Ollie. The second video will be of Ollie's track car, so it's 12 years in the making. his R53. Doesn't get the attention it deserves. A brilliant build, and I can't wait to get my hands on the keys. We'll do a tour of the car and also do a bit of a test drive for you as well. So thanks for watching, keep safe, and we'll see you in the next video.